Bucher, Fox Sports NBA analyst, covering the NBA now for almost 30 years. Your first year was 1993 was your first year covering the NBA. Do you remember it well, by the way, your rookie year?
I do, because it was one of the greatest NBA finals that I've ever watched. Triple overtime, Bulls Suns, Jordan versus Barkley. I came in on a high, my friend. Yes. So, and the Warriors were tanking for Chris Webber. So it was a very momentous year.
Okay, so we were believers. Kevin Durant, I said this earlier. There's an argument to be made, the two greatest teams in league history, the Warriors, when they brought in KD, and he fit in seamlessly. I had my doubts. And then the Bulls. That if you put players as good as Kareem or Magic on those Bulls teams, it would change the way they play.
Yeah.
You could just say, Pippen, you go home, KD, you play, and KD would work on that team.
Yeah.
You could make him a better version of Kukoc. Is that KD is very rare. In an era where those who score have to dominate the ball, he doesn't. He fits He fit with Simmons, who won't shoot, Kyrie, who won't show up, and Harden was out of shape. I think I watched yesterday, and I'm like, they can play with anybody. Maybe not Milwaukee, but what do you make of it?
I agree with you 1,000% when it comes to KD, because he can score in so many ways. And we saw that with the Warriors. What made him so devastating is he could score off of one or two dribbles. And you put him in position, and he's either scoring from the mid-range or he can attack the rim if he wants. But, yeah, that's why he fits with everyone. Now, I think one of the things that we're ignoring when we look at his fit with the Suns versus some of the other teams that we discussed is, as much as Chris Paul has fallen off, he's still the organizer. So you have that with the Suns. You have two scorers in Devin Booker and KD, and then you have a floor general. It's duplicative with the Dallas Mavericks. Luka Doncic is a scorer and the floor general. And so the diversity of roles and responsibilities.
It's clear with the Suns.
It's clear. And then you have Monty Williams, who has always preached defense. Like, that's part of their DNA. They may not have the same defensive talent, but that's still part of their base. So I understand why it works. And at this point, having seen everybody else, I was skeptical that the Suns had enough to get it done. But by default, I would say that they're my team right now to come out of the West.
Okay, and let's talk about the Warriors. So yesterday, Steph didn't have a great shooting afternoon.
Right.
But I think his absence has allowed Jordan Poole to flourish and grow, and Dante DiVincenzo to kind of become a floor leader. And so I look at them and I think, in a weird way, Steph got time off.
Yeah.
Two other guards appreciably grew.
Yeah.
I think they're a handful.
I don't, because one of the things that I thought the Lakers exposed was they're going to have problems against size, and they're going to see size along the way. Anthony Davis could do whatever he wanted.
Oh, he did, yeah.
And they don't have rim protection. That's where I disagree with you. Wiseman wasn't the defensive player that they needed. He's much more of an accomplished offensive player at this point in his career, and they didn't really need that, which is why they moved off of him. But they needed a rim protector. Their intuition was correct in terms of what they needed, and they don't have that now.
How did they do it last year?
Well, Draymond was still Draymond, and it was who they had to go through. Who did they have to go through that had size? Really didn't.
Well, the West, Jokic is, but Jokic doesn't play like a classic center.
He doesn't.
He's away from the basket.
Exactly. He's a playmaker, and he's from the tops, and they didn't have the driving forces, so you didn't have to worry about that in the same way.
Do you really have to worry about size in the West now? It's such a wing conference.
It is. It is.
I don't have an Embiid. I don't have a Giannis.
But the other part is, though, that the Warriors don't have great wing defenders. Like, Andre Iguodala used to bother Anthony Davis. Klay Thompson used to be a great defensive stopper, great two-way player. Those guys, with Klay, offensively, he's there. But I just believe the combination of not having rim protection and not having great wing defensive players is ultimately going to bite the Warriors. And there's also the disparity of road versus home. Home, they are unbeatable because, and I've been there, Chase Center gets just geeked up, and all those young players, suddenly Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome and DiVincenzo, they all play over their heads. Steph or Clay hits a couple threes and the building goes nuts, and now they all think, well, we've got this. And they've eked out a lot of wins. It's not like they're blowing teams out. They've come back to win games in Chase Center, I believe, just because of that momentum. None of that is existent on the road. And for where they are right now, they're going to have to play a lot of road games to be able to advance. I expect them to be in the playoffs. I don't expect them to be in the play-in.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to win on the road, and I just don't see the formula for them doing that.
So through my life watching the NBA and talking about it, veteran teams dominate in the playoffs, mostly because they're more physical, refs swallow the whistle, and these 29, 30-year-old guys have been in pro weight rooms for 8 years. They push around young guys, and the refs don't call it, and it becomes much more physical.
Yeah.
There's also a maturity factor. Memphis, Ja Morant, the gun IG story, and I look at Memphis and I think to myself, this is why I like veteran teams.
Yeah.
A kid. What do you make of the Ja Morant story?
It's a tough one because
it's not the first time in my life I've seen a young guy make a mistake in the league. He's a kid. He's rich. It's a lot.
Well, this is the interesting aspect, I believe, of where we are with the NBA. It used to be in college, you had to be conscious of the parental influence.
Yeah.
But once they got to the pros,
it was a pro. Yeah.
They were men, and they'd experienced life. Now you have guys who are becoming superstars
at 19,
in
20.
their early 20s. And the influence of, I just believe the family dynamic is greater than ever. And he's not alone. I mean, we went through the LeVar Ball saga.
Yeah.
Luka Doncic, it kind of separated from his mom. Like the influence, the number of parents now that want to be principally involved in their sons' careers as NBA players, Kyrie Irving's mom is his agent. Like it's not just that they're going out and hiring people to do the various roles. Like they're all intrinsically involved in their lives. And so now it depends on, are your parents giving their kids good counsel here? Do they understand the big picture? Or are they kind of treating them like parents and sometimes accommodating parents rather than disciplined parents? So I think that the dynamic has changed dramatically, and we're seeing it play out on this platform where we're conscious of everything going on. I there's so much about what I know about Ja that I believe. I don't believe he's a bad person. I don't think he's. I think that he didn't fully grasp what it means to be a superstar.
I wouldn't at 21.
And how vulnerable. That's why I'm slow to criticize. I know what I was like in my 20s. I made plenty of mistakes, and it simply wasn't on as big a stage as thankfully that Ja is. So knowing a little bit about who he is, I fully expect that he's going to recover from this. But I think it's commensurate for every young guy. I look at who is counseling them, who's advising them.
Well, the other thing is the reason the NFL draft gets such big TV ratings because you are watching men get drafted who can emotionally and physically win games in the NFL day one. In the NBA draft, you get 2 rounds. There's probably 4 players per draft that can play initially and have any impact, and they can't drink at the hotel bar.
Yeah.
They're 19.
Yeah.
And so the NBA draft doesn't do particularly well. You have about 4 or 5 guys, and even the ones that are home runs, they're kids. So I used to, we all grew up with Ewing at the draft or Tim Duncan, and like the college football draft, these were men.
Yeah.
They had a defined game, and they had a defined personality.
Yeah.
We're watching all these young NBA players. They're just growing in front of us. So I tend to be like, I look at John, I'm like, people have asked me, what's my opinion? My opinion is he's a 21-year-old kid. The world's his oyster. He's now got $100 million, and he's not quite sure who to eliminate from a social circle, who to include. I didn't. I was poor. So I just think it's a lot to heap on a 21-year-old or however old he is.
Especially with NBA players, they're always told, don't forget where you came from.
Of course.
And so there's this mixed message of, stay true to your roots. But the reality is, as a result of your fame, as a result of your finances, you're in a different stratosphere now. Don't forget
not everybody is a good actor. Even people that grew up with stability in their lives.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wannabes when you get rich.
100%. And you can, don't forget where you came from, but sometimes you have to forget who you came up with in order to.
Jalen Rose talked about this yesterday.
Yeah, in order to move forward. So I understand that.
I think he'll get it turned around.
The challenge. I would fully expect that he turns it around.
It's a respected inside. The management's respected, right? This is a pretty well-run organization, is it?
This is where I have questions about the Memphis Grizzlies. Taylor Jenkins is such a attention to detail coach.
Yeah.
But being around, and I haven't been around that team a lot, but what little I have, it almost feels like there's either a trade-off or a trust. It's a very young team.
Yeah.
I don't sense there's a lot of influence on them outside of what they're expected to do on the basketball court.
Yeah.
They're kind of left to their own devices.
Yeah.
This is speculation on my part, but I often see this in small markets with big stars. They're afraid to hold the young guys accountable because they think the young guys are going to go AAU on them and say,
I'm out.
Oh, what? You want to tell me what to do? Do you understand? You're Memphis. I'm Ja Morant. Yeah. I'll go someplace else if you don't, if you're going to try to pull the leash on me. And I'm not saying that's what is happening here, but I've seen that dynamic with teams that are afraid to lose their superstars.
Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers and Favre. They manipulate the franchise. Baltimore today is okay, Lamar, maybe not.
Yeah.
Right? They have a history of bigger.
It's the strength of it's the strength of the organization where they, Jerry Krause would say organizations win championships, not players. That's taking it to the other side of it.
Yeah.
But there has to be some element of that.
Okay, I'm going to throw this out there right now. We were talking about this last week.
This always scares me. J-Mac, this always genuinely.
The Knicks are going to knock somebody off. The Knicks are going to knock somebody off big. Oh. It's not going to be Milwaukee. You don't buy the Knicks?
I'm not buying the Knicks yet. I do. I think they're better, but their decision making is still suspect, and I believe it really comes down to matchups. And no, I'm not taking the recent wins, eking one out over the Boston Celtics as an indication.
Nine straight.
Okay. All right.
They play. Now there is a history in the NBA. Let's be honest. There are teams that haven't done anything in the postseason, and they treat the regular season with great urgency.
Right.
Celtics aren't. The Warriors don't in the first half. Popovich's Spurs after titles didn't. So this Knicks team, seeding matters. They would love
Tom Thibodeau teams take every single regular season game seriously. And then the question is, when you get to the postseason, can you elevate? I mean, look, honestly, I think they're better than the team that lost to the Hawks in the first round. But I heard this exact same narrative about, we're back, here we go. And it's not convinced yet.
I think your point, Thibodeau teams grind.
Yes.
And not everybody does in the regular season.
Yes.
You and I have talked about this privately or on my podcast, is that you go into an NBA game on most nights and people have two objectives. Some guys are resting players.
Yep.
I mean, the Lakers go Oklahoma City and we're resting AD for the Warriors game.
Yeah.
So, that's the Knicks' objective right now is move up the standings, get home court.
Well, and protect their jobs. I mean, honestly, they're Jim Dolan hasn't been overall happy with what he expected from a Leon Rose, Tom Thibodeau combination. So making hay and demonstrating that they can deliver is something that they're playing for more so than Joe Mazzulla and the Boston Celtics at this point.
Ric Bucher. Good stuff, buddy.
Good to see you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.